cell given. So in this problem, we are given with a reaction and we are asked to find out the equilibrium constant for this cell reaction. So to do that, what we have to do first is we have to set up a relation between the equilibrium constant and the standard cell potential, because the information given here, if you want to find out the equilibrium constant from the information, we have to set up the relation between the standard cell potential and the equilibrium constant, and the relation is as follows. The standard cell potential is equal to 2.303 RT over NF times log of K, where K is the equilibrium constant in order to cell potential. And since we are asked to find out the value in 25 degrees C, as we know that at 25 degrees C we have a value for this part which is 0.0592. So we can rearrange this to write down the or find out the equilibrium constant value, and this will give us N E naught over 0.0592 volt. So now we have to know the standard cell potential value and we have to know the value of N. If we know these two values, we can find out the equilibrium constant. So to find out the value of standard cell potential, let's write down the half cell equations, and from there we'll be able to find out the entire cell potential. So our anode half reaction here would be Fe2 plus, in aqueous form it will become Fe3 plus by giving 1 electron, and the standard cell potential for this half reaction is equal to minus 0.77 volt. And then for the cathode half reaction, we have oxygen reacting with 4 hydrogen. It will require 4 electron to give us 2 water molecule. So as we see that we need 4 electron to reduce the oxygen, and so that means we'll have to multiply the first equation by 4, so that we'll get 4 electron here. So if we just write this as 4, so it will be 4 and then 4 here and 4 here. And the standard cell potential for this reaction is minus 0.77 volt. So if we now just sum up these two values, so this 4 is with this, so it is 4 Fe. So if we now add them up, we'll get 4 Fe2 plus oxygen plus 4 H plus, and we will cut off these electrons, and on the right hand side we will get 4 Fe3 plus in aqueous plus 2 H2O, and then the overall cell potential will be the summation of these two. So the overall cell potential is minus 0. Okay, so the standard cell potential for yeah, I mean, the standard cell potential for this reaction is 1.23 volt. So now if we just sum them up, you'll get a value of 0.46 volt. So this is the standard cell potential for the reaction given, and now we just have to plug in these values in the formula here. And we know the value of n. The value of n here is 4 because we have 4 electrons transferring in between. So if we just plug in the values, we'll get log of E naught, no, log of K give us 4 times 0.46 over 0.0592, and this will give us a unit number of 31.08. And then if we take the antilog of this equation, we will get K is equal to 10 to the power 31.08. So this is the equilibrium constant for the cell given. So in this problem, we are given with a redox reaction, which involves the transfer of 2 moles of electrons, and given the equilibrium constant of this reaction, we have to find out the standard cell potential for this redox reaction. So let's first, to do that, we have to know the relationship between the standard cell potential and equilibrium constant, and we know that the relationship between these two is log of standard potential. The log of equilibrium constant is equal to number of electrons involved in the reaction or transferred in the reaction times the standard cell potential over 0.0592 volt. So this reaction equation is valid at temperature of 25 degrees C. So we're given the number of electrons involved in a redox reaction, and we are given the equilibrium constant value. We have to find out the standard cell potential value from here. So if we just plug the values we are given with, we can get, so we are given the value of equilibrium constant as 1.8 times 10 to the power minus 5, and we are given the value of n as 2, as the number of electrons transferred is 2. So just plug in these values, we will get log of 1.8 times 10 to the power minus 5, and on the right hand side we'll get 2 times the standard cell potential and over 0.0592 volt. And then from here we can get the value of E naught as, if we just solve this equation, we'll get the value of E naught as minus 0.140 volt. So the standard cell potential for this redox reaction given is minus 0.140 volt.
In Leclanche cell, which is also called dry cell. The following reaction occur at electrode at anode. As we know, at anode always oxidation take place, so zinc metal is oxidizes into Zn2 plus ion and release 2 electron. On the other hand, at cathode, the manganese dioxide MnO2 in the presence of ammonium ion NH4 plus ions gain these two electrons and is reduced, forming Mn2O3 molecule, where the manganese has been reduced from +4 oxidation state to +3 oxidation state. At the same time, ammonia is formed and a molecule of water is formed. In case of alkaline cell, at a node, zinc react with hydroxyl ion from the alkali. So zinc is oxidized, forming Zn zinc hydroxide, and 2 electrons are released. At cathode, the manganese dioxide in the presence of a water molecule gain these 2 electrons, forming Mn2 manganese ion form Mn2O3 molecule, and 2 hydroxyl ions are produced in the reaction. Here the manganese from +4 oxidation state has been reduced to +3 oxidation state. In case of nickel cadmium battery, at anode, cadmium is oxidized, taking 2 hydroxyl ion from the base. It is oxidized to Cd+2 ion, where it reacts with the hydroxyl, forming Cd cadmium hydroxide, and 2 electrons are released by the cadmium in this process. At cathode, nickel the reduction of the nickel take place, where nickel oxygen hydroxide NiOH in the presence of water molecule gain an electron, forming nickel hydroxide, and a hydroxyl ion is formed. To make the electron loss and gain equal, we will multiply the cathodic reaction with 2. The whole reaction will be multiplied by 2, so we will make the loss and gain of electron equal. In case of lithium battery, at anode, X number of lithium atom oxidizes into X number of lithium ion and give X number of electrons. At cathode, manganese dioxide react with the X number of lithium ion and also gain the X number of electrons, forming LiX MnO2 complex. In case of lithium ion battery, at anode, graphite anode, LiXC6 oxidizes, forming XLi ions plus 6 carbon atoms and give X number of electrons. At cathode, Li1 minus X COO2 react with XLi ion and gain the X number of electron, forming LiXCOO2 complex.
In this class, to find out the similarities and the differences between a battery and a fuel cell. So the basic similarity between a battery and a fuel cell is both of them are galvanic cells. That means they convert chemical energy to electrical energy by a redox reaction. So if you write that down, we can make two columns, one for battery and one for the fuel cell. And the similarity is both of them are galvanic cells. That means they convert chemical energy to electrical energy by utilizing a redox reaction. And the basic difference between these two cells is, in case of a battery, the reactants are contained in the cell. So reactants, in case of battery, reactants are contained in the cell, but in case of a fuel cell, the reactants are not contained in the cell. They're continuously supplied from an external source. And these are two the main similarity and the difference between a battery and a fuel cell.
In case of fuel cell, the following reaction take place at electrodes. At anode, the oxidation of the hydrogen molecule take place in the presence of hydroxyl ion. It form water molecule and 4 electrons are released in the process. On the other hand, at cathode, oxygen molecule is reduced, gaining these 4 electrons in the presence of 2 water molecule. Here it form 4 hydroxyl ions. As we know that the oxidation potential of hydrogen is 0 volt, while the reduction potential of oxygen in this case is 0.4 volt. To combine adding both the reaction, we can cross the electrons on either side. Also the hydroxyl ions on either side, and we can cut two water molecules. So we can say that two hydrogen react with an oxygen forming two water molecule, and the overall cell potential E cell is equal to the oxidation potential plus reduction potential, so it is equal to 0.4 volt. In case of proton exchange membrane cell, PEM, proton exchange membrane cell, PEM. At anode, the water molecule, the hydrogen oxidizes, form hydrogen ions, and 4 electrons are released. At cathode, oxygen molecule, in the presence of these 4 hydrogen ions, gain the 4 electrons, forming 2 water molecule. As again we know that the oxidation potential of hydrogen is 0 volt, while in case of proton exchange membrane, the reduction potential of oxygen is 1.23 volt. Combining both equation, adding the two equation, we can cross hydrogen ions and electrons on either side of the equation. So we can say two hydrogen molecule react with an oxygen molecule, forming two water molecule, and overall cell potential is equal to the sum of oxidation and reduction potential, which is 1.23 volt. In case of corrosion of iron, the iron is first oxidized into ferrous ion, where it gave 2 electrons. In the next step, the ferrous ion react with the oxygen molecule in the presence of hydrogen ions, where it further oxidizes into ferric ion. Here 4 ferrous ion oxidizes into 4 ferric ion in the balance equation and gave 2 water molecule. Then the ferric ion react with water molecule, forming Fe2O3 monohydrated rust molecule, and hydrogen ions are formed in the reaction. So here rust is formed in this reaction. In case if magnesium is present, so the oxidation potential of magnesium is high than the iron, so magnesium is oxidized to magnesium ion and release 2 electrons. The electron released by the magnesium keep the iron Fe3 plus ion in the reduced form, that is iron. To make the reaction balance, we will multiply the magnesium and the number of electron released by magnesium with 3, and the iron and the number of electron gained by iron with 2, so the reaction will be balanced. In case of magnesium, when magnesium is oxidized, and release 2 electrons, the electrons are gained by the oxygen and it form water molecule. So when magnesium is present, we will find the iron in the reduced form and there will be no corrosion of iron. This is called cathodic protection.
Today we are going to be looking at the electrolysis of potassium hydroxide, and in part A we will be labeling the anode, cathode, and ion flow, and in part B we will be labeling the reaction at the anode, cathode, and overall. Let's start by understanding what electrolysis is. So this is the process of electrically splitting an electrolyte. Currently our electrolyte is potassium hydroxide, which is going to break down to give us potassium and the hydroxide ion. If we look at what the anode and cathode are in the next steps, typically in our voltaic cell equations, we noted the anode as negative and the cathode as positive. However, in this, our cathode will be negative and our anode will be positive. Additionally, at the anode, we're going to be having oxidation, and at the cathode, we will be having our reduction occurring. By looking at Leo-Szöger, we can understand what's happening with our electrons. So at the anode, we are going to be having oxidation, so a loss of electrons. And at the cathode, we are going to be gaining electrons. And we're flowing from anode to cathode in terms of our electrons. Next, we are going to draw out what is going on here. So we are going to go and draw our 2 electrodes, and we are going to submerge them under molten potassium hydroxide. We're going to go ahead and label our electrode on the left as our cathode and our electron on the right as our anode. And as we have previously discussed, our cathode is going to be labeled as negative and our anode as positive. Based on the electrolysis of potassium hydroxide, it's going to break into K plus and OH minus. And due to the fact that opposites attract, K plus is going to flow towards the cathode and our ion flow for hydroxide will be towards the anode. And now we have completed part A. Next, we're going to write out our reaction equations. So we'll start with potassium at the cathode. And this is going to be a gain of electrons. So we're going to have our positive potassium ion reacting with an electron to give us elemental potassium. And this is our cathode equation. Now at the anode, we are going to have the hydroxide ion, and it's going to be losing electrons, as it is oxidation. And in order to see what this will split into, if we draw out our hydroxide ion splitting, it's 2 parts, oxygen and hydrogen will form H2O and O2 as compounds, and as I'm going to draw out now, we can see how the two H's and an O are going to group together, and how 2 O's are going to group together to form diatomic oxygen. Now we have to balance this equation as we have an uneven number of oxygen and hydrogen on either side. So to do this, we are going to put a 2 in front of H2O because this will give us an even number of oxygens to be working with, and if we are going to balance this out, we're going to write a 4 in front of the hydroxide ion on the left. We now have 4 hydroxide ions we're dealing with, so we're going to be losing 4 electrons. Now, for the overall reaction, we need to have an even number of electrons on either side of the equation so that we can cross them out. So because of this, we're going to multiply our cathode reaction by 4. And then we will be able to write our overall reaction. So it's 4K plus 4OH minus. That will give us 4 potassium plus oxygen plus 2 H2O. And that is our overall equation. That will be in blue. In green is our anode equation. and in red will be our cathode equation.
All right, so problem 31 here. We're given two bases, and we're asked to name the base and also figure out if it's seen in DNA, RNA, or both. Okay, so the way we go about this is to just look at the different function groups or different atoms that are connected to our kind of a main ring, right? So starting with part A here, we see that we got this group sticking out of our ring, and everything else would just be hydrogens, right? The white spheres represent hydrogen. So this is an NH2 group. So whenever you only have NH2 and nothing else connected to the ring, you got an adenine, right? And also adenine would have this two rings connected to each other. That's also characteristic of both adenine and guanine, actually. Okay, so this NH2 tells us it's adenine. So where do you see adenine? Do you see it in DNA, RNA, or both? And we know that the only difference between DNA and RNA is the uracil and thymine. So adenine would be found in both. Okay. Okay, so part B right here, we see how we got two hydrogen, or sorry, two oxygen atoms connect to our ring. So whenever you see two oxygen atoms connected as such, immediately we think either thymine or uracil. Okay, so those are the only bases in DNA or RNA that has that kind of structure. Okay, so what tells us whether it's T or U is whether we have this methyl group right here. So this is CH3. Okay, so if you have that CH3, that means you have a thymine. So this structure right here is a thymine. If you don't have that CH3, then you have a uracil. Okay, so where do you see thymine? Do you see it DNA, RNA, or both? And we know that thymine could be found in DNA only, because in RNA we have uracil and not thymine. Okay, so those are our answers for this one. Okay, problem 40. What are functional groups? Okay, so functional groups are little compounds or molecules that are connected to a larger molecule. Okay, so it could be just one atom. Okay, or it could be a compound. Okay, and it is connected to a larger molecule. Now, why are they important though? So they are important because these functional groups exhibit their own chemical properties. Okay, they have their own chemical properties. And those properties affect the larger molecule. Okay, so their chemical properties affect the chemistry of the larger molecule. Each carbon could handle 4 bonds. We can have 2 more other things connected to each of our carbon. So that would be the structure for an alkene. Okay. Part B, alcohol. Okay. So part B, alcohol is characteristic of having an OH connected to a carbon. So we're going to have this carbon and it will be connected to an O and H. Okay, so we're going to have OH connected to carbon, and as usual, that carbon could handle more bonds to other atoms. Okay, next, part C. Part C, we have an ester. And an ester is very similar to carboxylic acid, right? We have a carbon double bonded to O, and then we have another oxygen right here. And as usual, it would be connected to a carbon. Okay, so what makes ester different is instead of having hydrogen, carboxylic acid would normally have H bonded to oxygen right there. So instead of having a hydrogen, we're going to have another carbon. All right. So, and as usual, these carbons can be connected to other atoms as well. So this would be an ester. And finally, we have part D, which is amine. Okay. So amine is, as you probably remember, would have a nitrogen in it. So we have a carbon, and it will be connected to NH2. Okay. Or if you want to write that out, we're going to have two hydrogen atoms with nitrogen, okay? And as usual, that carbon space for 3 other bonds, okay? So that would be our structure for amine.
Let's propose a structure for the following conditions. For A, we need a ketone, which will have the formula C5H10O. So one possibility here is going to be CH3, CH2, C double bond O, which is our ketone, CH2CH. So there's one possibility for that molecule. For B, we want an ester with the chemical formula C6H12O2. So this could be one possibility, CH3, CH2, CH2, C double bond O, OCH2CH3. So there's our ester with the formula C6H12O2. And for C, we want an amine and a carboxylic acid, which has the chemical formula C2H5NO2. So this molecule could look something like H2N, CH2, C double bond OOH for the carboxylic acid. Let's draw structures for the following molecular formulas. For A, we have C2H7N, and a possible formula can be CH3, CH2, NH2, and that could be a structure that can exist. B, the formula is C4H8, and a possible structure could be CH3, CH, will include a double bond here, CH3. For C, we have C2H4O, and a possible structure here is CH3CHO as an aldehyde. And for D, we have CH2O2, and a possible structure here can HCOOH as a carboxylic acid. Let's draw the isomers of C3H8O. We can have CH3, CH2, CH2OH. We can have CH3, CH3OH, and we could also have CH3, CH2, OH3. So there would be the three isomers of C3H8O.
Problem 45, we are identifying function groups. Okay, so we have here the structure of cocaine, right? Structure of cocaine. And we are given both the line bond structure and the molecular. Okay, so whatever is helpful or easier for you to use, just go for it, right? And I'm just going to use the line bond structure right here. So I'm using line bond. Okay. So the way I want to do these types of problems is just to go on every carbon in the molecule. Okay. The first carbon right here is ACH3, so I'm not as interested, but it's connected to an oxygen, so maybe watch out a little bit, right? But once we get to this second carbon right here, we see that it is a carbonyl carbon, and it's actually a part of this larger function group, including the first CH3, right? So that makes it our ester. Okay, that makes it our ester. And after this carbon, we have this cyclic alkane, right? We got this ring right here. And in that ring, we see a nitrogen. Okay? We see this nitrogen right here. But it's not next to any carbonyl carbon, so that makes it our amine, right? So it's not an amide. It's not an amide. Okay? And then once we get to this carbon right here, right, we see that connected to an oxygen, and then right next to that is another carbonyl carbon. Okay, so group together would make another ester. Okay, and finally, we see this aromatic ring right here. We got a benzene included in this molecule, so that would be our aromatic ring. Okay, so at this point, we've gone over every single carbon in this molecule, and that's all our function groups. Okay, so problem 46. We're asked to differentiate straight chain versus branched chain alkane. Okay, so straight chain alkane is pretty straightforward. You just need to have all your carbon atoms in one straight chain, hence name straight chain, right? So what I mean by that is if you have any molecule at all, you'll just have all your carbons in one chain like that. Okay, now you could have other atoms that kind of sort of work as branches, like maybe you can have a nitrogen here, an oxygen here. It doesn't really matter as long as all those carbons are in one chain. Okay, meaning you don't have any carbons sticking out of the main chain. Okay, so moving on with branched chain alkane. Well, branched chain, as the name suggests, has carbons branching out from the main chain. Okay, so if you have a bunch of carbons in your molecule, okay, say this would be your main chain, there would be a carbon somewhere sticking out. Okay, so maybe you got one, maybe you got two, like that, and this would be a CH2, CH3. As long as there's carbon that is outside this main chain, right? So here we see a carbon and another carbon right here. That would be a branched chain alkane. Okay, but what I want to point out here, excuse me, is say we got something like this, right? Got that, and we got maybe a we got a carbon, and then maybe you'll have an O, right? OH. Okay, so that would be just an example I came up with. Okay, so now is this branch chain alkane? Okay, so is this going to be your main chain, and then is that going to be your branching group? And the answer is no. Remember, the main chain is the longest chain you could find. So if you find the longest chain here, it's actually the carbon. Okay, so that OH is going to be outside your main chain. So actually, this molecule right here is a straight chain molecule. Okay, so try not to be confused. And I know it's not exactly straight line, but they're all in one main chain. So hopefully that explanation was helpful.
Problem 47 is asking for us to differentiate alkane and an alkyl group. Okay, so an alkane is a molecule that contains only CH bonds. Okay, it contains only CH bonds, and all are single bonds. Okay, all are single bonds. Okay, an alkyl group is a substituent, right? It's a substituent that is derived from an alkane. Okay, derived from an alkane. Okay, so if we have, for example, an ethane, right? So an ethane would be 2 carbons, right, and 3 hydrogens each, right? That would be an ethane, right? If this ethane would be connected to a larger molecule, say we have this very large molecule right here, and here we connect our ethane, right? Okay, so once that ethane is connected to a larger molecule, we don't call it ethane anymore. We call it an ethyl group. Okay, so it is derived from the ethane, but since it's now connected to a larger, we call it an ethyl group. Okay, so that's the same for every single alkane and its corresponding alkyl group. Okay, also something to notice is that the alkyl group is missing one of the hydrogens. Okay, it's missing one of the hydrogens because it's now connected to the larger molecule. Okay, so hopefully that helped clarify the difference between the two terms.
Okay, so 48, we have a molecule here that is proposed with a chemical formula of C3H9. So we're asked, why would scientists be skeptical about this molecule? Okay, so obviously this molecule is supposed to be an alkane, right? And it only has carbons and hydrogens. The formula that we use for alkanes would be CN H 2N plus 2. Okay, so what I mean by that, if carbon has a subscript of 3, or meaning you have 3 carbons in your molecule, right? So you got C3. So N equals 3 right here. Okay, so then your hydrogen is going to have to be 2N plus 2. So 2 times 3, which is N, plus 2 would have to be 8. Okay, so this is supposed to be your alkane if you have 3 carbons. And that's precisely why scientists would be skeptical about this molecule is because it has 9 hydrogen, meaning it has one extra than what the carbons could handle. For problem 49, we have a set of molecules given in condensed structures, and we're asked to find what's wrong with it. So there's one thing that is wrong in each of these, and we have to find that. All right, so starting with part A, we have a carbon double bonded to another carbon here, and we see that this first carbon has 3 hydrogens. All right, so it has 3 hydrogens, but at the same time, it's also double bonded to carbon number 2, right? So if we rewrite this, we're supposed to have carbon double bonded to another carbon with 3 hydrogen in it. Okay, and that doesn't make sense because here carbon has 5 bonds around it, and that just violates our octet rule here. And so this part right here is with molecule A. Okay, so this part, okay, carbon 1 has more hydrogens than it can have. So part B, okay, carbon 1 is CH3 single bonded to carbon 2, nothing suspicious. All right, and then we got carbon 2 being CH2, okay, and then bonded to carbon 1 and carbon 3, again nothing suspicious. So let's move to our double bonds here. Okay, so what I want to do is redraw this part. Okay, so we have a carbon double bonded to another carbon, and then double bonded to an oxygen. Okay, and then this carbon is bonded to, let me number our carbons so we don't confuse ourselves here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I'm drawing carbon 3 here. This is carbon 3, and it is bonded to carbon 2. Okay, and then we have a hydrogen with it. And then carbon 4 here is bonded to CH3. Okay, so now that we redrew everything, we could clearly see what is wrong here. We see a carbon, and it has 5 bonds with it, right? It's double bonded with oxygen, it's double bonded with a carbon, and then it still has this bond with CH3 right here. So that's what's wrong here. This carbon number 4 more bonds than it's supposed to have. Okay, so part C. Let's I'm actually gonna go start counting our carbons here, so we could talk about it easy. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so carbon 1 here, right? Carbon 1 is CH3 bonded to a carbon. Nothing suspicious about that, right? Carbon 2 seems to be the same. Okay, so again, we come across our triple bond here, and I want to redraw that and see if there's anything wrong with it. Okay, so we got carbon 3, triple bond, C, and then this carbon 4 has 2 hydrogens in it, right? And then it is bonded to a CH3. And then on the left, we got CH2 bonded to carbon 3. So CH2. Okay, so is there anything wrong here? Well, yes and it's pretty intense compared to part A and part B here. Here we got a carbon having 6 bonds, right? Got 6 bonds. It has a triple bond with carbon 3, and at the same time it still has 3 single bonds with it. So that's just whack. Okay, so that's what's wrong with this molecule. Okay, carbon 4 has just way too many bonds than it's supposed to. Okay. All right, so we have the structure vitamin C here on our screen, and we're asked to figure out all the functional groups that are in this structure. And the way I want to go about doing these kind of problems is to just go on every single carbon in the molecule and see if they have functional groups connected. Okay. So starting with this carbon here, looking at everything that's connected to it, we see an OH group right here. So we got an alcohol group, right? So that's pretty much it for this carbon. Moving on to the next carbon right here. We'll look at everything to it. We got carbons, hydrogens, and this another OH group right here. So another alcohol group. Okay. So moving on, I'll start using a different color. Moving on to our next carbon. There's really no immediate functional group that comes out of this carbon, so I'll go and proceed to this next carbon right here, which is a part of an alkene, right? So this would be an alkene. All right, so, and then in this alkene, we see 2 alcohol groups connected to it right here, okay? So this is an alcohol group, this is also an alcohol group, okay? And then moving on to our last last carbon right here, we see that this is actually part of an ester right here, right? With these kinds of functional groups, we have to be a little bit careful because sometimes it just looks like a carbon group, but we see that it's actually an ester, right? So this is an ester, a cyclic ester to be exact, because it is part of a ring. So at this point, over every single carbon in our molecule, and I think we've got all our functional groups. Alright, so problem 50, we're naming some alkanes, right? Okay, so let's go for it, starting with part A here. So again, first step is to find the longest chain we could find, okay? So looking at the structure, this seems to be the longest chain, right? And next is we number according to where we have the first branch point. Okay, so I think it's pretty clear that the first branch point is closer if you count from the right instead of from left. Okay, because if you count from the left, this would be your first branch point. But if you count from the right, this is your first branch point, and this is just closer to the end. So, hopefully I explained that well, but anyways, let's go ahead and count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, so we got 8 carbons, meaning we have octane, right? We got an octane for 8. Next is let's go and find our alkyl groups. Okay, so here on carbon 3, we have a methyl group. So we have 3 methyl. Okay. And on carbon 4, we have an ethyl group. Okay. So we have CH2, CH3, which is ethyl. Okay. So we got 4 ethyl. Okay, so now that we have that, we can go ahead and combine every information that we have. Okay, so we go by alphabetical, and E goes before M. We start with 4 ethyl. So we got 4 ethyl, 3 methyl octane. Okay, so 4 ethyl, 3 methyl octane. Next, part B. Then find the longest chain, and I think this would still be our longest chain. Alright, and as usual, it looks like the first branch point is closer to the right side. Okay, so it's closer if we can from the right side. So let's go ahead and count. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, we have 7, meaning we have a heptane. Okay, we got a heptane. Let me box this answer from part A so we know it's separate. Okay, so we have a heptane. Next is we look at our branch points. Okay, so we see that on carbon 2 we have a methyl group. We have 2 methyl. And next on carbon 4 we have this 3 carbon chain, which is an isopropyl group. So we got 4 isopropyl. Okay. Right, so hopefully you remembered what isopropyl looked like. So finally, we've gone over all the branch points, and we could combine all the information we have. Okay, so I goes before M in the alphabet, so we get 4 isopropyl. Oops. Isopropyl 2 methyl heptane. Okay. Alright, so that's for part B. Going for part C, I want to do this on the left side since we're kind of running out of space here. Okay. It's like this would be our longest chain, right? And this time, I think the branch point is closer from the left side. We can't really confirm that. I think we just have to count from both sides and see. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if we count from the left side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so first branch point is always looks like either way you're gonna have it on carbon 2 first. But what makes it different is that this carbon has 2 methyl groups in it, right? So it has 2 methyl groups. Let me remove that. And if we count from the left, or sorry, if we count from the right, if we follow the green counting system, we're gonna end up having 2 methyl groups on carbon 6, right? But if we count from the left, if we follow our orange counting here, we're gonna have our 2 methyl groups on carbon 2. Okay, so remember we still want the least kind of numbers as possible in our naming. So if we follow green, we're gonna end up with let me get our highlight here, 2 and then 6, 6, right? But if we do the orange counting, we're gonna have 2, 2, and then 6. So having 2, 2, 6 would be better. In fact, that would be the only correct way. Okay, so let's start counting from the left then. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? Since we have 7, that means we have a heptane. Okay. In carbon 2, as we mentioned, we got 2 methyl groups. Okay, so we got 2 methyl, and I'm just gonna separate them for now. Well, we're gonna combine this later. And we also have that methyl group on carbon 6. So we got 6 methyl. So this is what I'm talking about earlier. If we counted from the right going to the left, we're going to end up having 2 methyl, 6 methyl, and then another 6 methyl. So if you add these, that's pretty much how I remember it. If you add these, be a larger number, it's going to be 14. If we add this is only 10. So we want this, okay? We want a lower number. All right, so at this point, I think we have everything that we need, so we could combine our information. Okay, so we have all methyls. So this is going to make a trimethyl, right? So we got 2, 2, 6, trimethyl heptane. Okay. There we go. All right, on to our last problem here. Okay, let's find the longest chain. This looks like it's gonna be our longest chain, right? Okay, so again, we count from left and then count from the right and compare. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so our first branch point, if we count using blue, the first point would be on carbon 5. Okay, be on carbon 5. If we count following green, the first branch point would be on carbon 4. So we're following the green counting here. So I'll erase everything and leave the green counting system, I would call it. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, meaning we have octane, right? For 8 octane. Okay, so our first branch point here, in fact, our only branch point, we got 2 things attached to it, a methyl group. So we got 4 methyl. And the other one is an ethyl group. Okay, so we got 4 ethyl. So at this point, we could find all the information we have. Okay, so we got ethyl and we got methyl, and E comes before M in the alphabet. So we got 4 ethyl, 4 methyl octane. Okay, so Alright, so finally we have named all the molecules we have for problem number 50. Alright, moving on to problem 51. Okay, we're still on IUPAC naming, and this time we are naming isooctane. Okay, so we are getting the IUPAC naming for isooctane. This is the common name for it. Okay, so first step, find the longest chain, and I think it's easier with the condensed structure right here to see that this is the longest chain that we have. Okay, so I'm going to number from the left and then from the right, and let's see where we hit our first branch point. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then from the right we got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so it looks like either way we're gonna hit our first branch point on carbon number 2. Okay, but as you see, if we follow the green numbering, if we count from the left, once we hit carbon 2, we have 2 groups attached to it. Okay, as compared to when we count from the right side, when we hit our first branch point, we only have 1 group attached to it. So this counting from left side would be our priority. Okay, and I'll explain a little bit more of that as we go. Alright, so we're counting from the right, as I mentioned, and I want to deal with this using our molecular model, since it has more space and it's easier to just write. Okay, so 5 carbons in our main chain, which means we have a pentane. Okay, we have a pentane. So on carbon 2 right here, we have 2 CH3 groups. Alright, so that's a methyl group. So we have 2 methyl and another 2 methyl. I'm just going to separate them for now and we'll combine them later. Okay, and then we have carbon 4 here with another methyl group. So we have 4 methyl. Alright, so at this point we've gone over our branch points and we combine the information we have. We have 3 methyls, which gives us trimethyl. Okay, and then we're just listing the numbers in. So we have 2, 2, 4, trimethyl pentane. Okay, if we have counted from the right side and following this orange numbering right here, we're gonna have 2, 4, 4 trimethylpentane, and as you could see, this would give us a lower total number. So that's why we counted it that way. Okay, but anywho, this is our IUPAC name for isooctane.
Alright, so problem 52, we are writing dense structures. Okay, so let's just go for it. Part A. Okay, part A says we have 3 ethyl hexane. So hexane means we have 6 carbons in our molecule, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and then 3 ethyl here means we got an ethyl group on our 3rd carbon. So this would be my 3rd carbon, and I'll go ahead and add CH2, CH3. So that's your ethyl group. Okay, and all that's left to do here is to add those hydrogens. Okay, so our first carbon here on the left could handle 3 more hydrogens. Okay, and then the second could handle CH2, and this 3rd carbon currently has 3 carbons by it, so it can only make 1 more bonded hydrogen. Okay, and then this 4th carbon could handle 2 more, as well as this carbon. And the last carbon only has one carbon connected to it, so it could make 3 more bonds with hydrogen atoms. Okay, so that should be part A. Part B, okay, we got 2,2,3 trimethylpentane. Okay, pentane. So pentane means we got 5 carbons. So I'll go ahead and write 5 carbons here. 4, 5. Okay. 2,2,3 trimethyl means we got 3 methyl groups. They're on carbons 2, 2, and 3. So carbon 2 has 2 methyl groups, and carbon 3 has 1. Okay. So I'll go ahead and fill those bonds with methyl groups. Okay, CH3, CH3, and another CH3. Okay, so now that we have all our groups connected, all we have to do is fill up the carbons with hydrogens. Okay, so this first carbon would be CH3, right? The second carbon already has 4 carbons connected to it, so it can't handle another bond, so we could leave it alone, right? This third carbon right here has 3 carbons connected to it, so it can handle 1 more hydrogen. Okay, and this fourth carbon could connect or could bond with 2 hydrogen more. Our last carbon can be CH3. Okay, so that's it for our part B. Okay, so just as a reminder for everyone that these spaces are not supposed to be part of our dense structures. That's just an extra space that left after my work, but when you write your structures, please make sure you don't have those spaces. Okay, part C. Part C, we got 3-ethyl 3,4-dimethyl heptane. Okay, so whenever I try to read these, I kind of start ignoring the groups first, and then I focus on the first thing that I need to know, which is how many carbons are there. Okay, so now I know that there's 7, so I'll go ahead and write 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, now I worry about the groups, right? So I got 3-ethyl, so I'll go to the third carbon and add an ethyl group. Okay, so I'll put it up here. Ethyl would be CH2, CH3. Okay, 2 carbons. And then I have 3,4-dimethyl. So I got 2 methyl groups. One would be on carbon 3 and one would be on carbon 4. So CH3 here and CH3. So 3,4-dimethyl. Okay, so now that we have all our alkyl groups connected, we fill those bonds with hydrogen atoms. Okay, so what I mean by that is that carbon needs to have four bonds around it, and we fill those bonds with hydrogen if they're missing some. Okay, for this first carbon here, this first carbon has 1 carbon connected to it, so that means it needs 3 more bonds, and that's going to be filled up by hydrogen. Okay, so second carbon would be CH2. This third carbon already has 4 carbons connected to it, so it doesn't need any more bonds with hydrogen. Okay, fourth carbon here could handle 1 hydrogen. Okay, these next 2 carbons could handle 2 hydrogens each, and our last carbon here would have 3 hydrogens connected. Okay, so that should be our structure for part C. And finally, we have structure part D. Okay, we got 5-isopropyl 2-methyl octane. So again, as you notice, I just kind of ignored all the groups there and went to the part where it says octane. Okay, so that means I have 8 carbons. So let's go ahead and draw 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and then I have an isopropyl group on carbon 5. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is carbon 5. And I have an isopropyl group. So hopefully you remember what isopropyl looks like. Okay, so this is what it looks like. It has a carbon that splits and connects to two more methyl groups. Okay, and finally I have the 2 methyl right here, so I'll go to carbon 2 and add a methyl group. Okay, all that's left for us here is to make sure that every carbon is connected to 4. If it's not, then fill it out with hydrogen. Okay, so first carbon here needs 3 more bonds, so we're filling that out with 3 hydrogens. Okay, second carbon could handle 1, then we have CH2 for the next 2 carbons. Okay, this 5th carbon has 3 things connected to it, 1 on the left, 1 on the right, and 1. Okay, so that means it could handle 1 more hydrogen. Then we have CH2 for x 2, and our carbon here would have 3 hydrogens connected to it. So there you have it. That's all our structures for this problem. Alright, problem 53. We are drawing structures, and as you would probably notice by now, they're all cyclic structures, okay? And the reason that I have these cyclic structures pre-drawn below is because I'm not drawing polygons, so hopefully you are. But there you have it. I have our cyclic structures pre-drawn. So let's just go for it, right? Starting with part A here. Part A says cyclooctane. Okay, so that just means cyclo meaning you have a ring, and octane that means you have 8 carbons. Okay, so 8 carbons ring would give you an octagon, right? So outside of chemical or chemistry context, that's called an octagon. So you're just gonna have to draw an octagon, okay? Which is what I have here in part A. So I have a cyclic structure with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 carbons in it. Okay, so that's pretty much it for part A. Part B is a little more complicated. We have groups now attached to it, right? We got 1,1-dimethyl cyclopentane. Okay, so pentane means we have 5 carbons, and cyclo means they are in a ring. Hence this pentagon that I have right here on the right side. Okay, and then we have 1,1-dimethyl. Okay, 1,1-dimethyl means we have 2 methyl groups, and both of them are on carbon 1. Okay, so at this point you're assigning numbers to carbons, and it's arbitrary. So you could use any of these carbons as your carbon 1. So I'll just choose this carbon right here. Okay, so I'll choose that, and there are 2 methyl groups attached to this carbon. So I'll go ahead and add those methyl groups. So there you go. That's 1,1-dimethyl cyclopentane. So this is part B. Okay, so moving on to part C here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 tetramethyl cyclobutane. Okay, cyclo meaning you have a ring, and butane means you have 4 carbons in your ring. So it's kind of like a square, right? So first is you draw that square or diamond, whatever you want to call it, and which we have here. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4 tetramethyl. Okay, so that means we have 4 methyl groups, tetramethyl, and they're on carbons 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so each carbon here is gonna have a methyl. So for this example, doesn't matter how you count it because they're all gonna have the same methyl group. right? So you can choose which of these carbons would be your carbon 1, which would be 2, 3, and 4. In this case, it doesn't matter, okay? So there you go, we have 1, 2, 3 tetramethylcyclobutane. So that is part C. Finally, here we have part D, and we got 4-ethyl-1,1-dimethyl cyclohexane. Okay, so whenever we are drawing structure, I think it's very important to start with the base structure, which is cyclohexane here. So as you notice, I kind of just skipped over all the groups, all the function groups, and I'll just pay attention to those here. So this is part D. So we have a cyclohexane, which is outside of chemistry concept, that would be called a hexagon. Okay, so you got six carbons in one ring, cyclohexane, and then we got 4-ethyl-1,1-dimethyl. So I want to go ahead and just number my carbons here, and again, it doesn't matter which one is carbon 1, so just choose that to be carbon 1, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so now that they're numbered, I can go ahead and put my groups. I have 4-ethyl, so I'll go to carbon 4 here, and add an ethyl group, so I'll have CH2, CH3. Okay, so that's ethyl, and I have 1,1-dimethyl, meaning I have 2 methyl groups, and both of them are on carbon 1. So this is methyl group and another methyl group. So there you have it. Those are all our structures for problem 53. Alright, problem 54 is asking us about aromatic compounds, and why is it that when a compound is aromatic, why is it that it doesn't necessarily mean that it smells nice? Okay, why is that the case? Well, that's because the term aromatic refers to a class of compounds that is made of a 6-membered ring that has 3 double bonds. Okay, so this is what the term aromatic means. It does not mean it has anything to do with the smell. Okay, so it is made for these types of compounds. Okay, so hopefully that clarified that term.
An addition reaction is an organic reaction in which the reagent adds to the multiple bond of the unsaturated reactant to yield a saturated product.
Okay, problem 56. We are writing structural formulas for these molecules that they described for us. Okay, so there's a lot of different answers for these kind of problems, so I'm going to come up with one, but if it's not the same as the one you came up with, it doesn't mean it's wrong. Okay, so these descriptions have many other isomers that could come with it, so I'll just write what I have in mind, and we'll go from there. Okay, so starting with part A. Part A says we want an alkene with 5 carbons. Alkene with 5 carbons. Okay, so that's exactly what I'm gonna do here for part A. I will write my 5 carbons. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I want a double bond somewhere. And I don't know, I just want to put it here on the very first carbon. Okay, so now that we have that, I actually need to rewrite that. Now that we have this double bond on the first carbon, right, we could fill up the rest of the bonds with hydrogens. Okay, so this bond would have CH2, right, could handle 4 bonds, and the same, oh, not actually not the same, the second carbon could only handle 1 hydrogen because it has 3 bonds before that. Okay, so then we have CH2, CH2, and CH3. Okay, so that's the structure that I came up with for part B. And again, that double bond could be anywhere else in this structure, so that's just where I wanted to put it. Part B. Okay, part B, we got an alkyne with 4 carbons, so I want to start with having 4 carbons, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I have 4 carbons, and we have an alkyne. We have an alkyne, meaning we have 3 bonds, or a triple bond. We have a triple bond somewhere, and I'm just deciding to put that again on the first carbon. Okay, so now that we have that triple bond, let's go ahead and fill it out with hydrogens. Right? This first carbon can handle 1 more hydrogen, plus those 3 bonds gives it a total of 4 bonds. This second carbon is saturated with 4 bonds, so we could leave it alone. So I'll just write the next carbon right, and then we have this carbon which can handle 2 more hydrogens, and finally we have CH3 at the end. Okay, so that's what I came up with part B. Again, if yours doesn't look like this, doesn't mean it's wrong. Okay, so there should be isomers that are for this molecule. Okay, part C, we got a substituted aromatic compound with 8 carbons. Okay, so, well, I know one very, very common aromatic compound, right? I have benzene, right? So what I want to do here is just to draw that benzene. Okay, draw that benzene. Okay, so it says that we need 8 carbons total, and benzene has 6, right? Benzene has 6 carbons. So we need total, so 8 minus 6, meaning we need 2 more carbons in this molecule. And it also says substituted aromatic, meaning it does have alkyl or functional groups that come with it. So I need 2 more carbons, and well, I'll just add 1 ethyl group, right? Ethyl group has 2 carbons, so CH2, CH3. So there you go. Is my aromatic compound substituted? Yes, it does have this alkyl group. Okay, does it have 8 carbons total? Yes. I have 6 from the aromatic ring, and I have 2 from the ethyl group. So it satisfies all the requirements for part C. Again, all of these structures are just what I came up with. They do have isomers that are also correct. Okay.
There are 3 dienes with the formula C3H8, and these are, so diene is a compound with two double bonds. CH3, so one, CH3, CH, double bond CH, CH, double bond CH2. So there's, sorry, this is C5H8. C3H8, let's fix that. C5H8 dienes with C5H8. Second diene will be CH2, double bond CH, CH2, CH, double bond CH2. So there's the second diene. The third diene is going to be CH2, double bond CH, C, double bond CH2, and a methyl substituent here. So those would be the three dienes that can be formed from C5H8.
Problem 58, we're still on IUPAC naming. Okay, so let's start with part A. As usual, let's go and find the longest chain we could find, and I think for this one is pretty obvious. And here we have a double bond, right? And the rule is whenever